Welcome back to the APSCC 2021 webinar series. I'm Christopher Slaughter, your MC for the series. Today, APT Satellite is bringing us a special topic, the changing cooperation model between the satellite and ground sector in the new space era. Very excited to hear more about how that relationship is being worked out for the new space era. Joining us today as the moderator for the session, Blaine Curcio from Euroconsult. And speakers today include Power Pan from APT Satellite, Vaibhav Magal from Hughes Network Systems in India, Hadi Nazari Marabi from North Telecom, and Joy Rudy Horiato from SkyReach. Very happy to have today's session. Look forward to hearing more about cooperative models between the satellite and ground system segment.
Thank you very much, Christopher. And indeed, welcome to today's webinar on the changing cooperation model between satellite and ground sectors in new space. As Christopher mentioned, I'm Blaine Curcio, Senior Affiliate Consultant for Euroconsult. And today I'm joined by four panelists from a diverse part of the value chain for satcom. So to get started, the first question is in this, there's a sort of changing world of connectivity everywhere, where the consumers are now expecting to have seamless, integrated, high-speed connectivity anywhere, all the time. And if anything, the COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated this change of everything going into the digital world. And in general, this could be taken as a good thing for satellite operators, in that satellites are very well positioned to connect everywhere, as it were. And so in this changing market, in this changing world of consumer preferences, how is your company positioning themselves, and where do you see opportunities in the market? So Hadi, we can start with you perhaps.
Yeah, thank you very much, Blaine. We as a service provider, in the supply chain, when pandemic happened, we have reacted very quickly because we knew that the operation has to be changed. The very first thing we have done was changing the operation model toward customers and also toward satellite operators. We have contacted our partners like satellite operator and satellite manufacturing equipment company, because we wanted to bring their awareness what is going on. Again, the very first thing we have done was changing our operation model, because sending engineer offshore and on board, it required a very different, basically, model to get the engineers on board. I think my colleague also from the other part of the world, they could also confirm that we have to change this business, the business model and also the operation model. So on the other hand, because we had to inform the satellite operator for the reason of perhaps more bandwidth, more demand of bandwidth, we have to start contacting them and also bring their awareness because of this situation. Perhaps we are going to upgrade our platform. We have to basically, bring more bandwidth for our customers. That's how actually we have reacted. We took quickly and adopted this change. And subsequently, we have brought a very unique operation, across different market segments that we operate, i.e. oil and gas, maritime market, and so on and so forth. That was a little of experience that we had during the pandemic.
So this enhanced focus on customers, and then sort of an enlarging of the network, and sort of getting more bandwidth to provide them with these more integrated services, it sounds like. Okay. So Vaibhav, do you want to give us a little bit of information about what Hughes has been doing in this changing marketplace?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Vaibhav Magu, and I look after the Asia Pacific segment. Thanks, Blaine, and to APSCC give this opportunity to be on this panel today. Hughes has been very busy during this pandemic, mainly helping our customers reach out to the underserved and unserved markets. Most of the economies today are work and learn from home. Everybody's staying at home. Largely, everybody's working from home. Everybody's continuing the education from home. So connectivity has come to the front stage and forefront for everybody. You can't really progress into a world anymore unless and until you have enough connectivity. We've been working with a lot of governments to bridge the digital divide. There are lots of programs in Asia Pacific, across Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia. So Southeast Asia, there's a lot of focus around that. In some of the other parts of Asia Pacific, which are slightly more developed, Australia, Japan, and Korea, etc. There's a lot of focus on connecting, improving the throughput for telecoms, improving the cellular backhauling. So there's lots of work being done in those areas. So we've really stayed very close to our customers, helping them expand their existing networks. Hadi is absolutely right. The bandwidth demands are going up because of these reasons. Hughes has also managed to make sure that during this pandemic, we support our customers. So we have challenges to send our engineers to get their hubs up and running or do the installations and commissioning. But we have been able to support our customers remotely, and we have really been able to do that. Now, globally, we have been installing and commissioning very large networks, very large ground systems for very large high throughput satellite systems, etc. And we have been able to do that successfully during the pandemic. So yes, it has been a bit of a challenge, but it's also been a lot of reorganization at our end so that we can continue to serve the customers. And lastly, we are a manufacturer, we are an OEM. So our factories continue to churn out the products that our customers need to deploy their networks. So, we're working with our supply chain, with our factories, and making sure that we continue to, develop and manufacture the products that our customers need to roll out their networks. So yes, we've been busy through this pandemic.
Indeed, yeah, a whole lot of moving parts, as it were. That's interesting. Yeah. Joe Rudy, would you like to give us a little bit of an update on what SkyReach has been doing during these changing times?
Yeah, when the outbreak happens, and we were quite worried about the people who look after the teleport services, because we not only hosting our own, but we also hosting the teleports for APT, Telesat, and we need to make sure our people stay in healthy conditions. So we do whatever precautions. We do tests regularly. And in fact, we urge our company do the COVID vaccination for corporates, because in Indonesia, there's two types. We have a corporate vaccination, which is a paid vaccination type, and there is also a free. But we make sure for our team, we do a corporate vaccination, which is a paid type. In terms of supply to our customer, amazingly, actually, in year 2020, because we started from 2019 into the maritime, and year 2020 is a tremendous, it's a good year for us, where in 2020, we installed almost 100 over ships in 2020 during the pandemic. We installed and supplied 100 over ships all over Indonesia. And yeah, the procedure getting tighter, you need to go for test, PCR test every time. You have to do a quarantine before you get on board. However, we came up with many type of solution. Like even we have engineers that hopping from one ship to another ships and stay in the sea for like almost 1.5 months, installing ships in 1.5 months. So, but grateful is also the USO project from the government last year. The Indonesia government gets all the small hospitals in the rural area, all must be online. And we did it almost 350 sites in 2 months' time, and accomplished all in the rural area. And the demand just suddenly come up to make sure all the people across the country are monitored, vaccination procedure are being monitored closely. So those are the government projects. So we have did last year. So those are the things beside the maritime, the fixed land with the government USO projects, and early this year was the one of the big Indonesian national oil and gas company that also contracted us to give a good connectivity for their people in the offshore, so to make sure they stay longer in the rigs rather than just do a crew change every 2 weeks.
And that's, I definitely want to talk about that a little bit more when we get into the oil and gas part, because there was a really interesting anecdote there. So yeah, but overall, I mean, it sounds like the opportunities in countries where the level of digitization is relatively low, like Indonesia, that, you know, COVID has really been a catalyst for starting to really make things digitize. And I mean, 100 ships and, you know, 350 schools in a relatively short period of time. These are big numbers. So interesting stuff. So now turning it over to the very kind webinar sponsor, APT Satellite and PowerPan. So Power, it'd be interesting to hear what APT has been doing in these changing times, and yeah, how you're positioning yourselves in the market.
Pan, I'm the marketing director of APT Satellite, a satellite operator based in Asia Pacific region. We are operating 4 satellites. So from the panelists said, it's a good news to see everyone increase business, more bandwidth consuming for all kind of different applications. Actually, the changing operation model has began way before the pandemic. We see the very serious oversupply problem in the worldwide, not only in Asia Pacific. So at that time, we have already started changing our operation model. The pandemic, of course, has deteriorated the problem. Luckily, we have recently seen recovery from all the vertical value chains. So far, we see the bad time, the worst time has already passed by. So we are trying to make the end meets. So far, we have seen, we expect more good news coming.
Interesting. It sounds like you know, different players at different parts of the value chain are having very different experiences during the pandemic. And I think that Power alluded to an interesting topic and an interesting point, which is the changes happening in the satcom industry on the satellite operator side are not necessarily new with the pandemic. We've seen this big paradigm shift of high throughput satellites. This is now probably 15 years is this transition, or 20 years in some cases. And we're seeing significantly more capacity at significantly lower prices. And this is leading to big opportunities, things like the USO projects, like Bhakti having gigabits per second of capacity for single leases. But at the same time, it creates challenges. I guess on the satellite operator side, you have legacy satellites that are not as cost efficient, and so you have to basically lower your yield on those. For players in the service provider sector, it can, I suppose, lead to contractual obligations that are at not competitive prices. So it would be interesting to get your thoughts on how this sort of increasing bandwidth on the satellite capacity side and the sort of uncertain demand on the user side, how is that evolving, and how do you see that evolving moving forward?
So we'll see the value chain of the whole business change a lot. We see a very high profit margin for satellite operators for quite a long time. That was called good old time, right? But now, yes, starting from 3 or 4 years ago, the HTS coming, we see a lot of oversupply. And of course, that will lead to price decline. That's quite a normal economic phenomenon. It's very simple and normal. For us, we have to change the operation model and the cooperation model with our partners in the whole value chain. For example, we started managed services based on a subsidiary company in a certain market. We are not doing this managed service for all markets, but only for certain inefficient market. That's very important. You cannot go to every market and say that we provide this managed service because it will cause conflict with your customer. That's not what we want to do. So for certain market, that's not very efficient in the customer side, customer service side. The APT satellite as a satellite operator, we think we probably can do something more. So for this data side, we have already done that, and so far it's proceeding quite well in that market. And also in video side, we have experimented on the service provision similar to the OTT. We have done a OTT experiment app. We launched in the App Store, Android and Apple. So far we have seen over 10,000 subscribers on that app, and it's a real thing. So as a satellite operator, we believe we are the first one to experiment into this unknown, uncharted water. So yes, we have been doing that. All the same reasons because of the changing models. And after now we are still in pandemic, but we have seen the demand is actually catching up very quickly. So that's to our surprise, but we see it's a very encouraging news thanks to the what you mentioned about the WUSO programs in this region, and also thanks to the technology progress. So so far we see this is now in a recovery track very well, and we will see that more coming in. So I'm confident you can say that.
And let it be known that I am one of the 10,000 or so downloads of the AppStar TV app. That is quite a cool initiative. So nicely done. So one of the things that you mentioned, I think, is worth bouncing off a couple of the other panelists. So you talked about how AppStar in certain markets, you don't vertically integrate. You have partners because you don't want to compete with them and you don't want to create that conflict. How do you, your role as a service provider, I guess that's quite relevant. That sounds like, and so if I can ask, is that indeed quite relevant for you? Do you find that to be an important element on the satellite operator side? And then sort of how are you handling this sort of supply-demand imbalance and the falling prices and all of those things?
Thank you, Belen. I think this is quite a very interesting topic, and with your permission, I want to get more involvement and interaction with my colleagues here in the panel. I really look at it a little bit different. I think supply and demand issue is down in the market since 2012, when the satellite operator introduced more bandwidths, and also the new entrant to market. We should not underestimate that. We had quite few satellite operator in the market. I'm right now in Middle East, in our Dubai office, and for example, here we had Yahsat as the new satellite operator, as new entrant. So one thing that I wanted to mention in here that would be very important, and I always said, according to Christiansen, Harvard, you cannot disrupt yourself. This is what I wanted to say. I think with HTS, LEO, MEO, although they are very good concepts, we somehow, in the last couple of years, we have disrupted ourselves, bringing a lot of capacity without creating demand. And also that goes clearly changing the collaboration model between the every single party within the supply chain. Obviously, as service provider, I see, and my colleague always see, huge opportunity down in the market. But the question always goes to all of us that do we have right resource and capabilities and what are those resources and capabilities. One of that, for example, we have a colleague from satellite manufacture equipment here, Vibe, I think he can maybe comment. Does satellite operator consult with satellite manufacturer company, circulating good amount of data, getting good amount of data from those guys in order to introduce the new technology? Because you don't want to go so fast in the market that you bring a lot of new technology in terms of space, but on the other hand, you don't have enough technology on the ground to utilize that bandwidth or to, let's say, convert that bandwidth to megabit. I want to engage my colleague Vibe, if you can maybe contribute and you share your opinion about this, I think would be great.
Vaibhav, any?
Yeah, sure. I think it's a pertinent point that Hadi has raised here. Hadi has raised. We have seen in Asia Pacific the first rung of HTS satellites coming, and initially there has been a lot of, I would say, doubts amongst the regional operators that would HTS really be the right model for them. But then I think everybody has come forward and embraced it very, very rapidly, mainly because I think there's a big opportunity for us to go and address the market, which is the end customer, consumer, enterprise, cellular backhaul markets that we're all trying to serve. Because there is demand, but then of course everybody has to address the end customer, the end consumer, who's only willing to pay so much. So everybody wants more capacity, and everybody wants that capacity to be more affordable. So I think bigger and better satellites are going to become pretty much what technology has to provide. So there's a big change, Hadi, due to this. Our role of working with the satellite operators has enhanced quite a bit. Right from the early stages, we are working with the satellite operators to work with them and understand how our systems can better integrate with the satellite design they're coming up. So earlier on, satellite operators were putting pretty much similar kind of beams everywhere, similar sized beams or similar shaped beams, and it was looking pretty much very similar. But now, as the satellite operators start understanding there are differences in markets, there are geographies where there's more demand, there are geographies where there's lesser demand. And then there are also shifts in bandwidth demand. So, a government program may last 4 years. And after they relinquish the bandwidth, where do you take the bandwidth and go from there? How do you move it across? So the newer satellites that we're seeing, we see a lot of changes from the satellite manufacturers. And from the ground segment side, we are as well innovating a lot at our end. So you will see a lot of software-defined satellites coming out in the next 2 to 3 years, and you'll see that we're actively working with satellite operators today to design these such that we do not create an overcapacity scenario. So there's too much of capacity where there is too little demand, and then create a, like you said, a challenging scenario for the operators themselves. So yeah, I do think that as an industry, if we cooperate more, we will learn more. Where should we put our resources, and where should we deploy the technology?
Excellent, makes sense. And Pak Rudy, as a buyer of satellite capacity and as someone who has seen a lot of capacity coming into the market on the supply side, and also seen a lot happening on the demand side, how are you positioning yourself in terms of the capacity situation as a service provider?
For our condition is although we have massive projects from the government, but for the private sector, we look into specifically a certain market. So we cannot see all the markets of connectivity we can take. That's why we limit ourselves. Since 3 years ago, we started to focus into mobility. We started to focus into teleport, and we focus into The third one is the special project on the offshore. So we need to really, for us, we look into what applications that you can introduce to your customer. Satellite used to be a very luxury bandwidth in the early days, for many customers. And yes, with the dropping price of the satellite bandwidth, in fact, we can introduce more applications to the customer that we require bigger demand, like probably last time when people have voice call is good enough, right? But now people will demand for video call, and that will require much more bigger bandwidth. And with that kind of situation, we can balance and we can keep our revenue stream stable by giving more bandwidth to the customer. However, I look at the technology itself. It will be much helpful for us as a service provider if we can have the ground equipment that can be easy to deploy. The key is how fast you can deploy and how you can, probably a TVRO engineer, a TVRO satellite engineer can have do installation of a VSAT system, a house broadband system. That will be improving the pickup rates of the market. And like Indonesia, we are scattered everywhere. Thanks to the USO project, now we have a lot of engineers all over the country who can do installation for VSAT. However, for some equipment, they are still a bit need a special skill to do that, right? So we hope how we can ease the installation procedure. That will be really helpful to improve the penetration rate for satellite.
Yeah, and in an industry where we talk a lot about needing to educate the customer, it's interesting to hear that there's kind of a surplus of people who know how to install VSATs because of this USO program. That's not something you hear very often. So one of the other themes that we hear a lot about in this changing environment is vertical integration, and whether that means satellite operator acquiring a service provider or satellite operator trying to move into this providing services market. And Power alluded to it a little bit earlier. So it would be interesting to get your thoughts from the different parts of the value chain about this trend of vertical integration, and whether you see it as an opportunity or a threat, both for your company and then, let's say, the industry as a whole.
We have some example case that actually we do collaboration with APT for supplying to the end user. So with this kind of collaboration, we will handle the risk together, okay, where we can focus on our market and APT can also partially come into our market, okay, and get into the end user acknowledgement as well. So last time, the satellite operator were just focusing on their, looking for provider, looking for satellite VSAT operator. But with this type of collaboration, close collaboration between us and the satellite operator, it will create more opportunities. For instance, we believe the satellite operator have quite a lot of excess capacity, right? And for us to start a business, we cannot immediately just bought as much as we want. So, however, if we do a collaboration for the excess capacity, okay, we can start to introduce broadband to the market, okay, and we can manage the user experience. Of course, the satellite operator will understand. So it's like we do like a revenue shares instead of
Right.
just buy and sell. So it will be really healthy to go into the market together for both of our business as well. So collaboration is very important.
Yes, I would like to just continue on Pakrudi's comment. Exactly, that's what we address the vertical markets. Previously, we only do wholesale. Now, because of the HTS, we have to go to the ground and do things together with our partners. That's very normal, especially in a very efficient market like Indonesia market. A lot of service providers. That's a very competitive market. A lot of in this kind of market, I don't think any satellite operator can directly be involved with customer, with end users. That's not a wise thing to do. So we have seen other companies giving out these zero upfront financing equipments to the customers. That would be not our choice at this moment. We don't think a vertical integration will be successful in a efficient market like the one in Indonesia. That's our strategy. Only for those inefficient market or some new market, new kind of applications, we see opportunities, then we will invest in that certain market. For example, everyone knows about our APSCC program. That's quite we put it in a subsidiary company to do the dedicated to do the managed services in only certain market. The major business will be limited in that market. That's our strategy, and I would like to share with our partners here.
Yeah, and I mean, to that point, I think APSCC looking quite specifically at the sort of greater China IFC market, that would have certainly been a pretty inefficient market before. So it makes sense that would be a target market. Yeah, for sure. Hadi or Vaibhav, anything on vertical integration or just these different kind of collaboration models that may be alternatives to that?
So I think vertical integration for Hughes has definitely worked in markets where there is a lot of demand, and it's feasible for Hughes to take all of that and vertically integrate. So definitely, that in the Americas, we have done that successfully. And in Asia Pacific, we have a company in India. However, in some markets like India itself, the regulation doesn't really allow you to put up your own satellite. You've got to take satellites from the government. So sometimes there are other bottlenecks other than your own desire or ability to put up vertical integration. In Asia Pacific, we mainly provide technology to satellite operators or to VSAT operators, ISPs and telcos. And I think the vertical integration model comes into play. The biggest part of service delivery is the cost of the satellite bandwidth, right? I mean, that's a big part of the whole integration. So I think more and more we see that satellite operators and ground segment suppliers would be working very closely, and then taking that business model that they come together with to the distribution. So Pakrudi or maybe Hadi then can use that collaboration that we have with the satellite operator and effectively deploy their applications for their customers. So you could run virtual network instances. Pakrudi could have his own bandwidth, could have his own customers, maybe serve maritime customers, and provide his own set of service plans. And Hadi could use the same satellite for his own customers, the way he would like to use his provide services to his customers. Again, these could be specific enterprises, or it could be a broadband service that he intends to roll out. So we see more of these collaborations taking place, and then eventually it's actually good for the market, because if you start taking high throughput satellite capacity and you start putting in too many carriers in a single beam, you start losing capacity. So you start taking away the efficiencies, which is what we're really trying to do, right? Try to make sure that we can take out every little bit out of there, squeeze every bit, and bring down the cost per bit, so that we can address more opportunity or create more demand for satellite connectivity. So I think the business models with satellite operators are evolving. There are different ways that we are participating with them, and I think it'll continue to evolve. It all comes together with opportunity, and we treat it on more on a case-to-case basis.
Yeah, Belen, I think one thing I just wanted to mention here is, are we talking about forward integration or vertical integration? Because it makes a little bit difference, when we talk about forward or vertical integration. I don't personally believe that we can do, I mean, our friends, satellite operator, they have tried to kind of, let's say, vertical integration. But when you talk about vertical integration, you need to make sure you have right resource and capabilities. Again, I have just said few minutes back that does satellite operator or satellite operators, do they have the right resource and capabilities in-house? Or they want to employ it and outsource it. In the case of APT and PAC-RODI, for example, they are working hand in hand, and it is not, it could be kind of vertical integration, but it is not a vertical integration. To my opinion, it is more collaboration between satellite operator and service provider, because we service provider, we are very specialized for customer care, customer service. We are down in the market. We know the real requirement of customers. We sub-segmentize the market. We list on the customer requirement, and we assign right resources, employ right capabilities, in order to create a right service and deliver it to customer. One thing I've said for the last few years in most of the panels that I was part, I think the flow of information within the supply chain is not good enough. So if satellite operators are not asking us what is happening in the market, what kind of application, is required, what kind of bandwidth is required, what kind of technology you believe that it works, then whether they want to do vertical integration or forward integration, I don't think it will work, and it will not be a sustainable and successful model. We have witnessed some kind of, let's say, I don't want to call it forward integration, but some kind of acquisition in the market. And unfortunately, it was not a successful model. The huge acquisition by some companies in the market didn't work. And primarily those companies, they end up to really bad situation, So again, it is all about the transparency and amount of information in the market, how the players, they can work hand in hand, how we will bring the transparency within the supply chain, and how we collaborate to create more demand, and how we can dive and adopt the blue ocean strategy within the different market. We have done that. For example, we down in Middle East, we have created a DTH platform that it was not exist. Today we have over 110 million viewership, and we work with a brand new satellite operator. We create a hotspot just within 2 years' time. That hotspot right now is one of the most profitable hotspot for all stakeholders, and subsequently, that actually indicates how satellite operator and service provider collaborate and go to different market or different market segments. Again, one of the things I personally learned for the last 5 years, I think it would be quite wise to segmentize the market, because this will enable all of us to identify what are the expectation of customers from that particular segment. So that was a little bit of my insight, and I just wanted to share with you and with the audience.
I'll definitely agree that the APT satellite SkyReach example is more collaboration than vertical integration. I think we're on the same page there. So talking about segmenting the market and getting very close to the customer needs and these different topics. So one of the verticals that I think is most specialized and also probably potential for fastest growth is the sort of mobility vertical in general. So that would include in-flight connectivity, maritime, some people would include oil and gas in that market. So it will be interesting to get your thoughts on the mobility markets as I've just defined them, and also I guess land mobile, if you'd like to include that, and whether you see any significant opportunities in those markets where you're looking.
Absolutely, Belen. We are seeing enormous amount of opportunity down in the market. The request for bandwidth is growing and growing, you know. And sometimes I'm personally afraid that we cannot deliver those kind of requests and requirements because of the collaboration model. Again, sometimes you can turn the opportunity to threat, you know, vice versa. And this is what I can see and I can encounter currently, because again, we are not well prepared. And when I'm saying we, meaning that everyone in the within the supply chain. The opportunity is huge. I can see that. We are receiving a lot of requests. We are receiving a lot of, let's say, you know, bandwidth upgrade from the existing customers. And also, I see a lot of new customers down in the market that because of particularly pandemic situation, you know, they are requesting for connectivity. And you know, when this kind of pandemic happened, I think one good thing was, I mean, despite a lot of bad things happening around the world, I think we came to know that we can work also remotely. So when you want to work remotely, then you need more needs of bandwidth. You need to get more bandwidth. And when it comes to satellite industry, because it was not quite usual that customers request for 10 meg, 20 meg, 50 meg, 100 megs. We're talking about relatively middle-class customers, you know. So those guys right now, they are thinking to upgrade their bandwidth, which is a very good news, because this is actually good for us and also for satellite operator. But there is one big challenge, and the big challenge is the vertical integration we were talking about, Belen. Many satellite operators, I mean, not many satellite operators, but 2-3 big satellite operators, without mentioning their name, they are not selling the capacity to service provider like us. So we would be able to create our own managed service. We could work with them, we could collaborate with them, we could buy, let's say, capacity, managed service type of capacity. But again, the question would be, if we buy the managed service capacity, is it something that customer needed or not? My assessment, absolutely not. Sometimes they are using the wrong technology. Sometimes they don't have right support guys to provide support, because when you go to maritime market, I think Pak Rudy can contribute to that as well. When you go to maritime market, when you go to oil and gas market, what matters is really customer care. Everything else is irrelevant. Capacity is just commodity for customer. And add value services. Sometimes customers down in our market, i.e. the maritime market, they are looking for more add value service than the bandwidth. This was not the case maybe 8 years ago, but today the information says that, and we are down in the market and we have all those information. Now, if I buy, for example, capacity from Intelsat, and they are having this maritime flex, and they are selling this managed service, right? Is it something that I can sell it to my customer? That would be the big question. VS, a satellite operator like APT, that they are selling any sort of bandwidth to service provider like us, and We decide how to convert this megahertz to megabit, how to build our own roads and our own coverage map in order to meet the requirement of clients. Again, the big challenge, there are a lot of capacity sitting down in the market, but the biggest challenge is how we change the collaboration model. I think that become a very good topic today, how we change the collaboration model to do not kill this opportunity which is sitting down in the market.
Makes sense. Pakrudi, do you have anything to add on maritime, oil and gas, or mobility in general?
Yeah, continue with what Hadi has mentioned about, I think, adding value add is, you need to in-depth understand what is the customer requirement and what are the applications that the customer wants. Okay, and even let's talk about maritime industry. For oil tankers and yachts, there are two differences. Okay, when you ask me, does the oil tanker crew will need TV channels? I will say, I probably say they will not have enough time. They don't have enough time to watch the TV, or they can have enough time to probably watch the soccer game. But definitely a yacht customer will demand for soccer channels and all the drama series channels because they have more time. So what I'm saying is, you need to specifically understand so you do not waste your efforts going into a market that you do not understand what their requirement is and how they work and what actually they needed. So based on this experience, very shallow experience that we have, this is something that we in future need to understand, that connectivity will be just a commodity, or I would say it's a complementary supporting, while what we need in depth is to understand what the application is needed. Okay, so recently the oil tankers in Indonesia have a requirement that every oil tanker must have a CCTV, okay, with a snapshot, and every 15 minutes they have to send it over to the company who rent their service. So what I'm saying is, with this kind of requirement, CCTV will need quite a significant numbers of bandwidth. And how are you going to address and with the right solution, so you will not overkill the customer budget, and they will think that it is reasonable. In a way, it will also increase their productivity. So that is what I would like to add on top of what Hadi has mentioned about. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you. And that every 15 minutes CCTV, that does sound pretty bandwidth intensive. Yeah, so that must be good news for those selling satellite capacity. Power or Vaibhav, anything to add from either of you on mobility markets or oil and gas or anything else that was said over the last?
I think I completely agree with you, Blaine. On the equipment side, we see tremendous growth coming in from the IFC sector. We see a lot of growth coming in from maritime. We continue to see a lot of growth. So for the short term, of course, a lot of this would remain on the geo constellations, especially wherever very high capacity is required. So I think sectors like oil and gas, where they require a lot of capacity for crew and for staff to access internet, etc., will continue to remain on geos. Going forward, once the LEO constellations show up with their ability to globally connect and provide a global network, definitely they would bring in a little bit more choice for customers in the mobility segment. And I don't think that necessarily they would cannibalize the markets, but I think effectively the demand, there's enough demand out there so that they would be able to service the segment. So on an equipment side, I think we intrinsically see that mobility is going to be one of the initial segments where you'll start seeing multi-transport terminals coming out, where you would have a mix of technologies being used by customers. Of course, not all segments within mobility would adopt that, but yeah, the initial segments such as IFC and some of the larger shipping oil and gas customers would definitely move towards such a model. But in the short term, I see a lot of demand coming in. So yeah, right now, maybe during COVID, the industry is not doing so well, but the moment we're out of this, surely will pick up back again.
Power, anything to add on your side from APT?
Yes, I totally agree to what panelists said. In general, we see the pandemic is a kind of a good news, quote. Of course, it caused a lot of bad news for the society, but for satellite industry, definitely it has catalyzed the demand side when it's the right timing on the ground equipment, on the satellite capacity price, in terms of the satellite itself, is getting cheaper, and the launch service is getting cheaper too. So it's a right timing for everything. You will see a single a point where the everything will change after the pandemic, and we regarding the vertical integration, satellite operators have done a lot. Previously, maybe they say satellite operators are not caring about the service side, the customer need. The truth is that when, okay, I don't name here, but a very big service provider approach us for changing business models. Actually, we are very willing to discuss about that. Given the background of HTS era, you see, we building ground stations all over the place in other countries, and we provide these ground station teleport services in the whole package, helping our local partners to do their business. And in the meanwhile, we are very willing to provide flexible kind of capacity, so that will not lock a lot of fund or commitment from our partners in the ground side, right? So when the demand up and down, they can also change their cooperation, change their payment and other schedules. That's what I mean. Satellite operators, generally speaking, are trying to get through this oversupply problem and also the pandemic problem. So this is what I'm going to share with our partners here.
Sense. Thank you. And one of the topics that we've talked around a little bit, but not directly discussed, is the role of government demand in the satcom markets, in particular USO programs, but also maybe more indirect things like Pak Rudy mentioned the new Indonesian requirement to send CCTV footage from these rigs every 24 hours, or every 15 minutes, I'm sorry. And so again, over the last few years, we've seen this massive increase in government demand in terms of specific USO projects, Bhakti being one of them, but then there being quite a few others. Is this sustainable? I mean, is this sort of like the tip of the iceberg, if you will? And we've now seen a couple of big USO programs, and we're going to see a few more in many developing countries over the next few years, or is this is there a chance that this does not necessarily scale very well and we don't see too many more of these programs, or just sort of government involvement in SATCOM demand more generally?
I think I can take that to begin with, Blaine, and I think USO programs are probably something which is currently sustaining a lot of the business for a lot of the industry, because that's where there's a lot of money being spent. In the pandemic, the enterprise customers just want to conserve all the cash they can and see through this tough time. It's the government who's really coming forward and saying that, hey, there is people in our country are falling behind. They can't participate in the larger economy because they're cut off from the digital world, and we're obligated to connect them. I think, if anything, this pandemic is going to show the way that governments need to step forward and actually take more central role. And there are some excellent models in Asia Pacific that can be looked at. I think everybody here has spoken about Indonesia, but then Malaysia is also trying a different model. It's a different kind of a country with a different kind of economic background. We have countries like Philippines. Australia has been very successful with their NBN program. So there are a number of examples in Asia Pacific as to how governments can step in and play the role. But definitely, I see governments becoming center stage. In fact, we are involved in the multifunction satellite program, which the Indonesian government calls Satria, and we are providing the initial ground segment, which is the hubs that have to come up when the satellite goes up. And it's a very exciting program to be part of, and it's really great to see the kind of commitment the Indonesian government has in terms of utilizing the USO funds with them to actually go ahead and deploy bandwidth and capacity. So definitely, on the other hand, it's a little bit challenging for APT, because that kind of sucks out a little bit of the demand for them, because the government is trying to put up their own satellite. But on the other hand, like Pak Rudy said, it's also creating a lot of resource, because there are more ground installations, engineers that are coming up. It's becoming more easier to get resources, etc., to connect in the rural areas. And by the way, the demand isn't going on. The Indonesian government continues to buy from the commercial sector as well, because they just can't get enough bandwidth, even though they're putting up their own satellite. So I think this all feeds off each other. The demand will keep growing, and I don't think this is a one-off. I think we're just going to see more and more governments stepping forward to do the same thing.
Very interesting. Hadi, are we seeing any of that in the Middle East in terms of USO programs, or is it at the moment more confined to the Asia Pacific region?
Yeah, I think in Middle East region, we don't see that much of USO project, we have also acquired company in Malaysia back in 2017, where we have over Asian presence, basically. Scoptel, the company that we have acquired back in 2017. So as Waiba said, I think these government projects are pretty much increasing, in Southeast Asia, I call it, in this case, for example, in Malaysia, for example, government decided, most especially because of this pandemic, they have decided to expand the connectivity all across the country. So yes, we see the growth from that segment or that sector, but it is really depend from region to region, In Middle East, for example, we don't see that much compared to Asia, but Asia, as I could learn from my colleague down in Malaysia and also Pak Rudy and the other colleagues, it seems that it is quite promising down there, which is at the end of the day good news, because the more bandwidth requirement, meaning that the more demand down in the market, But again, it might be very interesting at the beginning, but necessarily it might not be interesting in the long run, because if there would not be a right solution or right delivery, bandwidth delivery, then this will bring disappointment, as we could see down in Middle East and some other part of the world. For example, Europe is part of that, just for your information. We could see disappointment, and then government suddenly decide to change the penetration model, i.e. perhaps leveraging 5G, instead of satellite connectivity, or using fiber networks, expanding the fiber networks, despite to its difficulty for rural area. But at the end of the day, again, it is all depend on how we are delivering this service. And service delivery means, to me, service providers, because service providers, they have their feet in the market and they are in a direct contract with customers and they have got customer mentality. Satellite operator, they have also got customer mentality, but they have an asset to manage customer like us who understand or who are buffer between the satellite operator and end customer, you know? So this all depends on how we collaborate and how we work together for creating more demand in the market, which is not a new task. I think it has been emerged since 2012 and it will continue, but thanks to Corona, I have to say that, you know, that it accelerate the process somehow because we were either sleeping or we were pretending to sleep, working hand in hand within the supply chain. This is something happening almost across all market, Blaine. I think you should be knowing that more than us, you know, because as a company who do research, market research and all, I think you understand this better than everybody. The lesser amount of information, the less the delicious the food would be, you know, and then this is what actually we were witnessing for the last few years. But it is not still late. We can work hand in hand. We can make the things happen, and we can, I'm sure, take this opportunity, you know, and expand over reach and expand over basically services to those untapped market, to those untapped segments, basically. That would be my little feedback or little insight.
Yes, working hand in hand to deliver more delicious food to the end customers. I think that's something we can all agree with. Power Pack Rudy, if either of you have any thoughts on that, and then we can move on to the last topic, which is LEO constellations.
Maybe not in the government side. I want to say something more about the vertical integration, and maybe something about the horizontal integration. Some of you mentioned about satellite programs that will pose a threat to our business in some certain markets. That's quite, in our understanding, that be very, very normal. The problem for Asia satellite market is that we lack of both vertical integration and the horizontal integration. The first vertical, why is that? We are not actually reading this very much willing to do that. But the reason is very simple. Generally speaking, Asia operators are not so much capitalized, you say. So our incentive is not based on the revenue. So rather than revenue, maybe more satellite operators in this world, in this part of the world, is more based on the profit. So you see, if we started to go down the value chain to do something nearby our nearby our customer, your profit margin definitely will drop. Okay, so that will not be a very good incentive for our business. So that's quite simple. And for our counterpart in Western world, they have a different story. They want to merge, a lot of merge. The more revenue, the better, because a different kind of incentive program. So that's my understanding on the vertical side. We are not willing to do that. Now it's because of the situation pushing us to do something, okay? But as I said, it depends on the markets. There is not only one solution for all these kind of applications. For different market, for different applications, we have to take different strategy. Okay, secondly, for the horizontal integration, definitely that's a you rarely see any such kind of example in Asia. The reason also everybody knows is because of regulation. that Asia is full of small and big countries who have their own regulations, which may pose a challenge for the satellite operators to merge together. So that's what I understand. So for our company, we are a leading satellite operator in Asia Pacific. So we understand the situation, the markets, through the cooperation with our partners. What we see, the market is bouncing back. So I will keep optimistic at this moment.
Okay, and Pak Rudy, anything from your side on government, USO, other topics?
Yeah, with the government USO program, I believe, although the fiber has been also laid everywhere to all over Indonesia, but looking at Indonesia as an archipelago country with tens of thousands of islands, and I would say it is very amazing that satellite will not be obsolete for the connectivity. Just how we did the rural hospital project last year, we did into small island that probably only have one hospital, but you need to travel to that island with a boat, and that's everywhere. So it's not possible for a country like Indonesia to be wired with fiber everywhere. So I believe with a situation like this, and it is also not easy to maintain the fiber optic availability across so many rural area. You go into the forest, into the mountains, and it is not going to be easy to maintain the availability of the. So satellite will be still there, and I've discussed before that whether this satellite will be just a transition technology before Indonesia with all wired with fiber. I would say that not in the next 10 years, okay? And I believe the satellite will still be needed, and the demand will still increase. That's what I can add from the USO program.
Excellent, good to hear. Well, I think in the interest of time, we probably don't have time for a Leo question because we got only about 2 minutes left. So with that being the case, thank you all for your time and your participation. Special thanks to APT Satellite as the sponsor, but also thanks to our other excellent panelists from North Telecom, Skyreach, and Hughes Network Systems. And I will hand it back over to Christopher from APSCC for some closing remarks. Thank you all.
Thank you very much for that, Blaine. Thank you, Power. Thank you, Baibab. Thank you very much, Hadi Nazri and Pak Rudy. Very much a pleasure to have all of you today on the session, talking about the cooperation model between satellite and the ground sector in the new space era. So that wraps up the first half of our 2021 webinar series here at APSCC. But we're not done. We will have a lot more webinars coming your way in the second half of the year. And hopefully a few more special events coming up. In fact, the next special event we've got is the 24th of August, which will be another of our innovation showcase series, this time featuring Korean companies. So please do join us. But also join us for the upcoming schedule. If you want to find out what it is, we'll be posting it on APSCC SAT, APSCCSat.com, where you're watching this webinar. You've already registered. Your registration should still be good. If it's not, just register again at APSCCSat.com. We look forward to seeing you again soon. And of course, if you're interested in previous topics, they're all available online. So please do join us and enjoy. Thanks again. We'll see you soon.